He was 69 years old. Just 3 weeks before he died, he sat in his doctor's office and heard the words most people find reassuring. Everything looks good. His blood pressure was manageable. His cholesterol levels were within an acceptable range. His ECG showed no obvious concerns. There was no urgent warning, no alarming test result, and no indication that his life was about to change forever. By every standard measure, he appeared to be doing just fine. According to his wife, that evening felt completely normal. They shared dinner together, watched television, and talked about plans for the weekend. Nothing seemed unusual. Nothing seemed out of place. Before heading to bed, he kissed her goodnight, climbed beneath the covers, and went to sleep. It was the kind of ordinary evening most people would forget by the next week. Except this one would become a night his family would remember forever. He never woke up. The official cause of death was a massive cardiac event, the kind that strikes silently in the middle of the night and leaves no opportunity for intervention. One moment a person is asleep, the next, everything has changed. His family was devastated. Beyond the grief itself, they were left with a question they couldn't answer. How could a man who had been told he was healthy only 3 weeks earlier be gone by morning? There had been no dramatic morning, no crushing chest pain, no desperate call for help, no final moment of panic or alarm, just the terrible stillness of a morning that should have been ordinary. And at the center of the story was a habit he had practiced almost every night for years. A habit it now strongly associated with exactly this kind of nocturnal cardiovascular event. A habit so ordinary and familiar that most people never even consider it a potential threat. Now let me tell you about someone else. A woman, 64 years old, who woke suddenly at 2 o'clock in the morning with her heart pounding so violently she was convinced she was dying. Terrified, she immediately called emergency services. When paramedics arrived, they found her blood pressure at a level that deeply concerned them. Fortunately, she survived. She received treatment in time, and the event became a warning rather than a tragedy. Later, while reviewing her medical history, her cardiologist began asking detailed questions about her evening routine. At first, the questions seemed unrelated, but as she described a habit she had followed consistently for years, the connection became clear. When the doctor explained what that behavior could be doing to her cardiovascular system while she slept, she sat quietly for several seconds. Then she said something I've heard many times before from patients. Nobody ever told me this. Not once. Not in 64 years. I am sharing these stories because I have heard versions of them more times than I can count. Different people, different circumstances, different outcomes. Yet the same pattern appears again and again. At the center of the story is one common habit, something so normalized among older adults that its cardiovascular consequences rarely become part of the conversation until after damage has already occurred. The man who died was not simply unlucky. His cardiovascular system had been placed under strain night after night, a specific, identifiable, and modifiable behavior. The risk wasn't hidden. The biology wasn't mysterious. The connection existed. But nobody had ever explained it to him in a way that changed how he viewed his nightly routine. Today, I want to make sure someone explains it to you. Because information only protects us when we actually know it. For decades, the American Heart Association has documented what cardiologists call nocturnal cardiovascular vulnerability. This is the well-established phenomenon in which the risk of heart attack, stroke, and sudden cardiac events rises significantly during the sleeping hours, particularly between midnight and 6 o'clock in the morning. This isn't fringe science or a controversial theory. It is a recognized physiological reality supported by decades of cardiovascular research and clinical observation. During those overnight hours, the body undergoes important hormonal and autonomic changes. A healthy cardiovascular system adapts to those changes smoothly and efficiently, but an aging cardiovascular system, carrying years of accumulated wear and tear, often responds differently. The same biological shifts that are harmless in one person may become dangerous in another. As we age, the margin for error becomes smaller, and seemingly harmless habits begin to matter far more. The National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute has highlighted another critical factor that most people never hear about. In a healthy individual, blood pressure follows a natural daily rhythm. It rises during waking hours when activity levels are high and falls during sleep, typically dropping 10 to 20% below daytime levels. This nighttime reduction is not optional. It is one of the body's most important cardiovascular recovery mechanisms. That overnight drop is when the heart experiences something closest to true rest. It is when blood vessels are relieved from the continuous pressure of daytime activity. It is when important repair and maintenance processes occur throughout the cardiovascular system. Think of it as a scheduled recovery window built directly into human biology. Without it, the heart and blood vessels are forced to operate under strain far longer than they were designed to. But for millions of adults over the age of 60, that normal nighttime drop never occurs. Instead, blood pressure remains elevated throughout the night. In some individuals, it actually rises higher during sleep than it was during the day. Researchers refer to this as a non-dipping blood pressure pattern, and it has become one of the strongest predictors of future cardiovascular events. Unfortunately, most people have no idea it's happening. The danger is that non-dipping blood pressure produces virtually no symptoms. There is no pain, no obvious warning sign, no signal that something is wrong. A person can go to bed believing they are resting peacefully while their cardiovascular system remains under significant stress for hours. Night after night, that hidden pressure places strain on the heart, damages blood vessels, and increases the likelihood of exactly the kind of event that ended that 69-year-old man's life. And that is where the danger truly begins. Because once this pattern becomes part of someone's nightly routine, the damage accumulates silently. Weeks become months, months become years. The cardiovascular system absorbs the burden one night at a time until eventually the stress reaches a point where the body can no longer compensate. For some people, the first warning is a trip to the emergency room. For others, there is no warning at all.